Good evening, hello. What's happening around the world? It is the next episode of the Footballic Show, and we've got some incredible Villa moments to talk about. I think just a good Premier League weekend, all in all,
The best
and
week in Villa history.
yeah, best week in Villa history.
Best week in my
Um,
life, in Villa history.
yeah, do you know what? I'm probably around there. I'm around. I'm around there. I'm in that territory.
For
I'm in
sure.
that territory. Anyway, well, let's get into it. I think we're going to start off the episode with like a 15 minutes just chatting about the Villa for a bit.
Yeah, we're just going to get into the mad week that Villa have had.
Yeah, but before we do that, I think we should briefly just go over the points for this week's predictions, and then we'll go into the results a bit after.
um, so
Um,
it was 8. I got 8 points. You got 9.
ooh, that's higher
Pretty
than I
strong
thought.
week.
Yeah,
Pretty strong week for
Jesus.
both of us. Yeah, we both got. I think we both got a sort of average amount of correct results, maybe slightly more than average, but we both got a couple. You got 3 correct scores. I got 2, so
Oh,
that's kind of
I got three correct scores.
boosted the points up. So yeah, good week. Good week.
Very
10
nice.
points.
Okay, yeah. Let's move
Oh no,
on. Oh,
done it wrong.
oh. Well,
I'm
that's
docking you
that's
a
life.
point.
Oh no. What did you? How did you give me an
Oh
extra
wait,
point?
I'm docking me a point as well.
When?
I
How
fucked
have
it.
you done this?
I just gave us 2 points for a game. I should have given us one.
Oh right. Okay. Well, anyway, let's get into the Villa talk. Because no one's docking Villa points at the moment, are they?
No man.
Absolutely not. Um, I mean, we've already spoken about the City game in a bit of depth in terms of just how it just completely changed everyone's perceptions of how how well Villa are doing at the moment. Like
Yeah,
yeah, it came from a how are Villa this good to like how good a Villa like kind of thing. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely, definitely. Kind of a felt like a bit of a moment in our
Yeah,
season where we've gone from a plucky kind of team who are overperforming a little bit. Obviously, a solid team, but still, well, we've spoke about it in the pod before. When we come up against top teams, we still sort of play on the counter and try and sneak a result.
yeah,
But that game was the first time I've seen us go up against a top team and play them at their own game, try to maintain control of the game, keep the ball, dominate, be on top, and yeah, we completely achieved it, which is the first time it's kind of happened, and it is like oh, Villa aren't just that team that play on the counter. It's like Villa are a team that can go and dominate anybody now.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, well, but we've talked about the City game, so the Arsenal game is a bit more interesting, really, because we caught City at kind of a bad moment for them.
Yeah,
The Arsenal game was a little bit more of the what you'd probably expect from those types of games from Villa.
yeah. Well, I'd say they're in top gear at the moment.
Yeah,
Well, other than that result, coming into this, they'd had that. Was it 5, 6 wins in a row in all competitions?
yeah, they're in really good form. They just had like a late win
Yeah,
against Luton, high on
lots
confidence.
of goals. 6-0 win against RC Lens as well in the Champions League.
True, yeah,
So everything going for them at the top of the league. A team that people are predicting to be up there with City and with Liverpool come the end of the season. So
yeah,
it was going to be a little bit more of a challenge than a slightly depleted City side. But,
mm,
I don't want to make excuses for City. Like they're only missing, they're only really missing De Bruyne, Grealish, and Rodri in that game. Of players who you could see starting in their absolute best 11, and everyone knows they still have a squad of world class
yeah,
players good enough
yeah.
to replace those guys. So let's not give them any excuses and say that it was a poor City side rather than a great Villa side
No, no, of
because
course.
it was still a great Villa performance, best Villa performance I've seen. Many people have seen, for God knows how long. I mean, most people are saying about 30 years, isn't it? Since obviously Champions League final and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely up there.
yeah,
Yeah, but then yeah, like you say, the
obviously
Arsenal game
the
was
Arsenal's different.
slightly
Yeah,
different contextually. You would expect I mean, there's few teams in the world really that would match Arsenal in top form in terms of keeping the ball um, and maintaining kind of control of space on the pitch and stuff like that. They're elite at that really.
Yeah,
Um, we managed to hold out for the result and stop them scoring, which many teams can't do. And aside from a couple of spells in the game where they probably should have scored, we have got to say that Arsenal probably should have scored that day based on the chances they created.
yeah,
Um, but aside from a couple of spells, we were relatively comfortable. Really, it wasn't like we were super lucky to come away with the result. We defended pretty well, restricted them fairly well for most of the game, and created our own chances as well. Had they scored, they probably deserved the goal from the game. But had they scored, we were still dangerous on the counter. So it's not
yeah.
to say we wouldn't have gone and scored again. So it was a bit of a different game to the City game, but still not. It wasn't a fluke result. We still played really well against one of the best teams in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely more of a smash and grab. Like, it wasn't a complete smash and grab. Like, we weren't just defending for our lives and hit them on one counter attack sort of thing. I tried to go into the stats a little bit more and compare them to when Arsenal beat City 1-0, and it was relatively similar. I think possession was a little bit more in Arsenal's favour, and XG was a little bit more in Arsenal's favour against Villa than it was against City. But it was a very similar scenario where one team outplayed the other by margins, not necessarily huge margins, like relatively small margins, um, and yeah, they just didn't get the result. It wasn't too much of I don't know, an injustice against Arsenal. They didn't win the game. Like, the goal we created was very intricately, very intelligently created. It was very fast,
Yeah,
efficient football, clinical. Arsenal weren't clinical. There were 3 or 4 times they did get in and around our box, and you could have said maybe they should have scored or created a better chance there. But I think there's only one of those times where you can genuinely say they should have scored. So probably the game deserved to be 1-1, um, just based on the quality of chances. And then you get into clinicality if you like, but that's an extra layer of whether you deserve it or not. If you can't finish,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
like, of course, there's always going to be that kind of uh, thing with if you win the game and you happen to be the team that possibly on the underlying stats didn't deserve it, then you're going to go into, yeah, well, you have to finish chances, otherwise you don't deserve it. And then there's always going to be the ones that came out on the other side going, oh, but they didn't really deserve it. We outplayed them. So you've always got both sides of it, and I think you just have to really have watched the game and see it in its full context to understand what was really deserved on the day. And
yeah,
I think for the amount of pressure Arsenal did try and put on us, and how often we dispossessed them in their own half at times, you still have to say that Villa made a very dominant Arsenal side. As the season's gone, completely nullified almost. So and there were multiple times we dispossessed them, as I say, in their own half, and we just fumbled the pass, or we didn't make quite the right decision. If we'd have been a bit sharper and less tired in that second half, especially, we could have seen a 2-0 potentially.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's the impressive thing as well is that obviously everyone's got congested fixtures at the moment, um, but we just played an incredibly intense game against Man City, and like the mental and physical energy to beat Man City, and then to go and do it against Arsenal as well. Um,
well, it was a
is
very different
is
game against Arsenal. We weren't anywhere near as intense in the press. At least in the
no,
second half. Like, we did give it a go in the first half, but you could see 10 minutes into the second half, players just like flailing legs out trying to block passes and stuff, and you could visibly see players, um, being less effective due to being tired. So
yeah,
that's
you could
when
really tell.
he really started to make the subs, and it's fair enough because they
Yeah, I
had
mean
to
that's
put them
that
all
we
into the first half.
say it all the time, don't we, about Emery and his experience and managing games and stuff. But like this game, he brought on he brought on Dendoncker, which is a player where you're thinking, considering the amount he's actually played in this team recently and the level he looks at when he does play, you're thinking, Christ, we can't be bringing on Dendoncker against Arsenal right now to hold on to a lead. But I think that's just Emery's experience coming in again. He'd ideally probably not bring Dendoncker on, holding on to a lead against Arsenal, but he recognised that a fresh Dendoncker is probably better than, say, Kamara, who's played like 100 and however many minutes over the last 10 days, whatever.
Yeah.
So it was just a well managed game, like I'm sure Emery has recognised that you can't maintain that level of intensity that we played at against City for 2 games in a row against 2 immensely good teams. But yeah, so it was another example of us managing a game really well. I liked how Emery said after the game in the post match press conference, he was asked about the 15-game winning run, and he was like, "This is ridiculous. I'm probably never going to do this again in my career." He seemed to like really be enjoying it, which is quite rare because he's so pragmatic and he's so like focus on the next game, not get ahead of ourselves. But he
Yeah.
clearly enjoyed.
Yeah, I think after that the emotions just got over the top, and McGinn was talking about titles and, well, banning the title word and things like that. So I think, yeah, they do need balance, as he did say after the City result. But I think he probably
Yeah,
should have said it again after the Arsenal
I
result, because
imagine
it
he
did
probably
get,
did to the players, to be
yeah,
fair. But I think it's like it's good for the fans as well. Like nobody said anything explicit. Nobody said like we
yeah,
are a title race or we're going to win the league. But it's like the reason we're talking about this week as a massive week is that the conversation has shifted a little bit from are Villa in a title race really? Like surely not. Like are
no,
they
it
in a
was
top
it was
four
top four.
race?
It was our
Exactly.
Villa
Yeah.
in the top four race. Can they finish
Yeah.
there? And people were like, "Yeah, I back him too." Or, no. And then
Yeah.
it
Like
was like,
probably.
this will be the acid test against Arsenal and City. Like, if they can put, if they can compete well in these games, then we can say, yeah, maybe they're top four candidates. But no one really expected us to just dominate City and then nullify
Yeah, after the
Arsenal.
City game,
So
it was like, are they in
yeah,
a title race? Like, are they really going to be doing it? But then you beat Arsenal, and then it's like, and then what you got from the players and the manager in the conferences was like, um, we're not ruling it out. Basically, it's like technically we are. We can't rule that out anymore. Uh, but still, Emery still said, "Ask me again when we're 32 games into the season." I think they'll still be
yeah,
level-headed about it. It's just you can't help but believe a little bit when you beat the 2 best teams in the league. Arguably.
yeah. It's just gonna be, I think, going into the second half of the season. I think we're gonna have. I think it's in terms of the teams we play in, like the top six. So you've got Newcastle, Liverpool, um, Tottenham, Manchester United, Chelsea. Um, well, just looking at Newcastle, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, for example, we're going to play all them at home. So that's four of,
Yeah,
like, whatever top 6 or 7 you want to create, right? And say they're going to be tough games. We've got more of those at home in the second half of the season than we have in this first half. It's only because the ones we've had at home that we've won have been against the absolute best two,
yeah,
that it's been, this big story. Second half of the season, we've got more of them at home than we do have away. So, yeah, the away form's still going to be important, because, we don't want to discount games against anyone else, because everyone knows pretty much anyone can beat anyone at this point in the Premier League. So you've got to be on your toes and respect every opponent every game week. So by no means am I saying those games don't matter, but just looking at that puts us in a very, very strong position, because if we can continuously take points off other teams at home, and we've got more games at home than away against teams in and around us coming forth in the season, you've got to say that looking at our home form, you've got to say that puts us in a great position to maintain our position, or even
yeah,
go up.
absolutely. Yeah, that's it. When you're talking about top four chances, um, yeah, like you say, the home form is just so strong that I think we are in a really good position now. Having that 6 points against Arsenal City is like 6 points you'd never expect to get. It's almost like bonus points, and it
Yeah,
kind of
that's like
affords,
12 points.
yeah, kind of affords us a couple of slip ups. Um, and yeah, if we can just maintain the home form, we play like say Liverpool. Newcastle at home, and you'd back us to not lose those games at least. It's just how long we can keep the home form up as well, really, because like Emery said, it is a ridiculous run. We're not going to keep winning, but then at the same time, you don't imagine we're going to start suddenly losing loads again at home. So it's
Yeah, it's I want 5 or 6 more because that I think that matches the record. I believe. If
yeah, that's the thing.
I
I was looking at the record. It's actually not that
Yeah,
many away, really.
it's 20 cities. So our next 5 at home is Sheffield United, Burnley. That's 2 we can definitely get. Then it's Newcastle. Their away form's been bad, and we beat them 3-0 last time at
Beating
home.
3-0, yeah.
And just looking at home against anyone at the moment, like you've got to back us. United have been fumbling. By February, maybe they're improved, but again, you probably back us. And then Nottingham Forest, at the moment, they are shocking. They shouldn't have beat us at their place. We'll have a ton of energy to get revenge there. That's the 5th against Nottingham Forest. That takes us to 20 if we can win that. Then it's
Yeah,
Tottenham. Then it's a big test
yeah.
to see if we get the
That would
record.
be crazy, wouldn't it?
So yeah, I mean, hopefully, why not? But
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that. That's the attitude at the moment. Is it's like everything's possible. It's gone from it's gone from we're really good at home, and then you beat Arsenal and City, and suddenly we can just keep winning. There's no reason we shouldn't keep winning, really.
yeah, it's almost like we're in this area of like you've got upper mid table up here where it kind of verges onto the Europa League and Conference League spots. You've got the relegation zone, and a lot of teams in there are kind of have free reign to finish in any of those positions, and no one really takes too
Mm.
much notice. Then once you start pushing up above that, and you start trying to get Europa League, Champions League kind of positions, you reach all of a sudden so much resistance, and whenever you're trying to push up through those zones, it's always doubt, 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 doubt. There's still
Yeah,
praise, but everyone's doubting you with the praise, and they say,
yeah,
"Oh well, these guys, they're pushing up above where they should be. It's
yeah. They can't keep it
overperformance,
up.
etc. They're running hot."
Yeah,
Once you kind of break through that barrier and you start saying, no, we're actually going right to the top and we're beating those kind of teams that were in around us, it's almost like you burst the balloon and all of a sudden everyone's just like, oh no, they must be going up and up and up. So
yeah.
like it's like
Yeah,
I
you
don't know,
just don't
it's
know
a
what to do
weird,
anymore.
yeah. But I think the same mentality still stands. Probably realistically, is that we're probably not going to sustain exactly how we're playing right
Yeah,
now for the
yeah,
full season, or maybe into next season. Possibly we might maintain it for this year. Depends on a lot of things. Depends how other teams improve. Depends how our form might change. How effective our high line becomes. Do teams find a way of exploiting it? Things like that. Things can always change, but I'd say we probably can maintain it for most of the rest of the season.
yeah. I think I'd have to back us to do that as well. Really, like you say, there's a lot of factors involved, but the squad's good, and there are a couple of positions where if we got injuries in them, we'd be in trouble. But we got the January window. I think we will improve the squad in the January window. So yeah, that there's no reason at this point to say we're due to start going on a bit of a bad run of form. There's nothing in the performances or the results to suggest it. So I imagine it'll happen at some point, probably out of the blue, maybe coinciding with an injury or a particularly intense performance in the Conference League or something with fatigue or whatever. But at this point, no, I think we're yeah. There's no reason we can't keep maintaining it
Yeah.
and and stay in that top four. Yeah.
Just touching
Um,
on January transfers, like I think, given the position Emery's in and the amount of trust and control he's already been given, I think he'll be trusted fully in this January window to go and get anyone he thinks he needs to sustain any kind of top four or title challenge.
yeah, I think like the owners are going to be
Um,
thinking, okay, we're actually there now. We've just got to hold in onto it, and like they will be thinking, yeah, if you're this good now, you can have whatever you need
yeah,
because there's no
hopefully
risk for them.
that's a Ceballos, a Ceballos,
Jesus, that would be mad.
maybe
That
a
would be mad.
Ceballos and Abraham.
I think Ceballos is like, yeah, I think backup striker would be smart because like our season could potentially be completely derailed if Watkins gets injured. That's our one
Jonathan
major weak
David.
position. So I think striker would be smart, and I think in terms of maintaining this kind of like run we're on and supporting the squad and the mentality side of things, Ceballos would be brilliant because of his experience.
Yeah, and it really helps if Dougie Luiz gets injured, like a match like Brentford where he's going to be
Yeah,
out. That kind of metronome of the side. Obviously, Dougie's much more than just a metronome, but that's the kind of functional role he plays. If we've got someone who can just step straight into that spot, then it's not even really a concern, is it? Someone of that
no,
quality.
but yeah, no, I expect Emery will get backed. Depends whether he thinks he needs anything as well, because I get the feeling that he kind of prefers a fairly small squad. He's talked about wanting two players in each position, but he's happy to go with the same 11 each week. Um, so it's not like he's going to go out and buy players for the sake of it. I think he'd rather maintain the harmony of the team and make sure he's got absolutely everyone on board rather than risk buying a new player who's not going to buy into things.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, we're in the top four now. It's the owners. It's not like we're in seventh and the owners are thinking, well, we could spend loads of money. Would that push us up? We don't know. We're there now.
well, I don't
It's
even think it's necessarily spending loads of money necessarily. I don't,
well,
it's just a
I
whether
mean,
do we go get people or not.
yeah,
That's
it,
it.
it just depends who we need, really, doesn't it? But by that I mean making big signings. Really, it's not necessarily about the money, but just making big transfers. Because whether Ceballos would cost loads of money or not, it's a big transfer. Because if you're in seventh in the league, like you probably can't sign him because it's his reputation and it's part of it is his wages as well. But it's like the caliber of player. But obviously, if Ceballos thinks that he can move to Villa, who are going to be in the Champions League next season, then that's a big signing for us.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but the owners are going to be they're going to be giving Emery absolutely everything on it if
yeah.
he thinks he
I
needs it.
I, I think I don't think they're going to go big on anyone. I think if they went big on anyone, it would be like a Nico Williams. They'd just be like, let's pay his release clause, or Banya. I think Banya, he may well go out and just say Banya can play all these different positions, so I want him and a backup striker, and that'll take us through. Or he might go, you know, like prior to getting those two results against Arsenal and City, if say we were just hanging about in fifth place, for example, after those two results, he might have been able to get away with saying, okay, let's get a relatively cheap backup right back and maybe like a 20, 30 million backup striker. Now, maybe you could say he's earned the right to spend more, but I just don't think it's his style. I don't think he wants to bring in a big name, big money player halfway through the season. I think we saw that with him signing Alex Moreno, and then waiting until the summer to get you Pau Torres and Musa Diaby. That's the kind of
Yeah,
way I think he likes to operate. Is January is let's support the squad, let's support our objective for the year, because especially in the Premier League, you've got the intensity which games are played at. I mean, we've just seen that over the last two when it really comes to it, and you've got a big game. Even if your style, you might want to be, a little bit less intense at points. You just have to be intense in a game if you want to come out with the result, and that's regardless of how well you can play tactically. So he'll want more players in there to support that, and bringing in like a 10, 15 million pound right back who's got experience, or a 20 million pound striker who's maybe getting on a bit but still guarantees you a few goals, whatever it is. I think that's kind of the way he'd like to operate, because they can seamlessly come in and support the objective and goals of the squad for that year without significantly disrupting the squad's harmony, I think. But
yeah,
at the same time, there is the kind of line of thought of, if you're going to make signings, you might as well make the ones that make the most sense from both a football and business perspective. So they might say, well, we might as well just go out and spend the 35, 40 on Jonathan David, spend the, I don't know, 30 plus on someone like a, well, Ceballos, I don't feel like will be that much, but perhaps if they were going to go and sign someone who, like a Martin Zubimendi, maybe they would spend more money, or a Nahuel Molina at right back, they might spend more money. But I just don't think that's the style to go for.
No, I kind of agree. I just think he's practical, isn't he, Emery? And I think he will be wary of disrupting the squad. And I think essentially the point is that we don't really need any major expensive player to come in, um, because there's no one in the team right now who's getting replaced. You could sign like more or less anyone in the world, and there's no one who's walking straight into the first 11 because Emery's, he's obviously loyal to his players, and everyone is performing absolutely brilliantly. So
That's a
there's no
statement.
clear weak link. What?
That's a statement. I think you've got the. I think there's some
Practically,
claret and blue tinted glasses on there.
no, no. Practically, you don't like. I'm agreeing with your point. Like you
Oh
don't go
no!
out
Oh right,
midway
yeah.
through the season
You don't want.
and
Yeah, you don't want to make the change. I was just in terms of when you said there's no one almost in the world that could walk into this team, and we have no weak links. I was like,
no.
well,
Theoretically, of course, there are players who get into our team,
yeah,
but practically, whoever you sign in January is not instantly replacing a player who is
yeah.
third in the Premier League and is committed and is playing out of their skin for the team. Like no signing you make is going to walk into the team right now,
What about
because you
Chavez?
essentially don't need. I don't think he'd walk into the team. He'd sit on the bench for at least a few games and then he'd find his place maybe. But
Hmm.
like you say, like practically halfway through the season, those the thing with those big money signings. That's probably why people don't make massive signings in January as often as they do in summer, is because you don't want to disrupt the team. The team is in full flow,
Yeah,
um, and it takes players a while to get bedded in and find their place within the squad. So yeah, and there's nowhere that we're super weak either. I think if there was an obvious weak link, then we'd go and sign whoever it took, however much money they cost. If there was an obvious major weak link that was kind of threatening, our chance of finishing European places or whatever, I think we would. But I just don't think we need it. That's kind of the point. Is that I don't think we'll go out and make a massive money signing because there's no super obvious weak link at the moment that's really threatening our position. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think future's looking bright for Villa. Should we get onto some more of the Premier League?
yeah, so we'll
Give
talk about
people's
a
ears a
couple of
rest.
the other results of the weekend. So we'll do Man United Bournemouth, shall we?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh
Bit
god.
of a yeah, Man United bizarre. We both went for a Man United win on this because well they're inconsistent, but sometimes you just think they're inconsistent, but they've been getting results. Sometimes you just think the quality of their players will get them through, but they just got absolutely battered at home.
Yeah, I kind of thought at the time when we spoke about this, I linked Bournemouth and I likened them to being sort of like Villa after Emery came in last year, and so that's why I went with the 1-0, just purely because I was like they're in a similar place. Both teams, United probably a little worse off, but they do tend to get like these sort of shitty 1-0 wins at home and things. So I'm imagining Bournemouth will probably take the game to them, and they might just not have the quality to get over the line away from home at Old Trafford. But yeah, just United, the more you kind of think they're just sort of going to somehow come through with results, even though they're playing shit, just because it's United, then they surprise you even more and
Yeah,
just play even worse at
it's
home. So
ridiculous. They're
I,
so unpredictable at the moment.
yeah, well, I mean, perhaps it's partly. Obviously, United were bad. Like, especially the first goal was horrendous from United.
Yeah,
But Bournemouth are playing well. There's no disrespect on that side of things. Like, you can't get around that. Bournemouth are looking like a good team.
no, they're
Um,
looking really good at the moment. Yeah,
so from that perspective, fair play to Bournemouth, and that's going to affect potentially how I go forward in predicting their results and
definitely. Yeah, it's been a
how
kind
I'll
of
be seeing them.
sustained little run of good results for Bournemouth now, where it's yeah they're looking very solid. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, Man United they're just unpredictable, aren't they? They're kind of mentality wise, they just look completely flat as well because they did control like possession of the ball in the game, but they just didn't have any kind of intensity about them. They had no creativity going forward, really. And it's like at the back, they just kind of fall apart. It's like they don't got no like concentration. No, they're not intense and like aggressive enough in the tackle.
Yeah,
They're
that
just
first goal,
flat.
that ball was just bouncing, and the United players were all
I
just watching
know,
it.
like they're just watching it. Yeah, it's just like, how do you turn up to a home game with the pressure they're under as well? Like everyone knows they're under a lot of pressure to perform. How do you turn up to a home game and start a game like that? If you're going to be intense and aggressive in any game, it's going to be the first 10 in a home game. But they're just kind of dallying about. It's kind of just bizarre.
Yeah, I've always sort of thought this when I look at a professional footballer. Right. Yeah, and I understand, teams get to states where there's like unrest in the changing room, and the football club can be in shambles and falling apart and everything. But at the same time, like, even for me playing, any time I go and play football, which I haven't done for like probably more than a year now, anytime I'm stood on some grass with a football in front of me and I'm supposed to be playing with it, it's not just some kids in the park and I've just nicked it. um, like, I just can't help myself but constantly run after it and just run around like a mad chicken.
Yeah,
Like, or was it a headless chicken? Sorry, or a madman? I've
mad
mixed up.
headless chicken.
Yeah. But yeah, I just can't help it. And when I see a professional footballer with thousands of people watching them in the full kit, professional dude who's got all these amazing goals, all these good skills, and you're not, you can't be asked like what.
Yeah, it's
What
really weird.
I don't get. I just and you get paid so much money. That's not even. But that's not even like part of my thinking. Like,
No, I don't think that would
do
come
you
into it. I think it
do
is.
you
It's
not
just
just
like,
love playing football?
yeah,
Like,
this is your job. This is like the dream job for you. Obviously you're competitive people. Nobody gets to that point in their life without being an inherently competitive person. And then yeah, you turn up with like 60, 70,000 people watching you, and you're just like daydreaming on the pitch and just wandering about. It's yeah, really weird. But Bournemouth did look good. They were really good going forward, really good on the transition. Solanke's having a really good season, scoring loads of goals.
yeah,
Um,
he's looking decent.
he is definitely a shout for fantasy. He's quite cheap
Yeah.
for,
Oh my
for
god,
the
I,
form
my,
he's in.
my my brain's been going wild with fantasy shouts this week. I'm like Iwobi, Wilson, Pereira,
Man,
um,
I so nearly put Decore in
Bailey,
my team. So irritating because he scored, but
Bailey as
yeah, it's a
well.
weird one. Yeah, Bailey's so cheap, man. But it's like Bailey, like the way Villa are, it's like you could just play 5 minutes at the end of the game. Sometimes he's
Yeah,
not.
but he'll
I'm not.
still score.
Yeah,
that's
true. Yeah, true.
that's the thing. At the moment, I don't even care if he doesn't start because I'm like, when he comes on, he's
No,
going to
he's
do
probably more
something.
likely to score if he comes off the bench. To be fair.
Yeah. So
Um,
I'm really
yeah,
just considering swapping him for Bailey at the moment. Just Diaby for Bailey at the moment, just based on that fact.
I mean, yeah, based on form, Diaby is. I mean, Bailey's worked himself into Diaby's position, really, hasn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah. So that's Man United. Terrible. Everton, Chelsea.
Who? 2-1. I predict for this. I think it went pretty much as expected. I actually, to be fair, I didn't think Chelsea would dominate the ball as much as they did, but in terms of how effective Everton were in just essentially bulldozing straight through them, not giving a crap, did the job, didn't they? Yeah,
Pretty much. Yeah, they're just kind of an efficient, effective team at the moment, aren't they? They're not really doing anything special, but they're defending well. They're creating enough chances to win games.
they win the first and second balls.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what
Yeah,
you're getting from a Dyche team is the mentality is on it, and they're always aggressive. They don't turn up like Man United do and just fucking wander about.
yeah,
They've always got that commitment, and yeah, I mean, we both went for an Everton win. We both went 2-1. I obviously initially said 2-0, but fucked it.
yeah. Is that? I mean,
Um,
if you could, if you were clipping the podcast up, that would be a famous clip by now. It'd be viral.
yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. So both did predict an Everton win. You could kind of see it coming just because Everton are on good form, and Chelsea are one of those teams where they've obviously got quality and ability, but when they're probably especially susceptible to these games where they're coming up against some kind of mentally and
Yeah,
physically tough teams
I,
because Chelsea just
yeah.
look kind of weak.
I wouldn't say they have necessarily quality and ability. I'd define it more as talent. because talent can be
Yeah, I
defined as
mean,
something that's unfulfilled. So
they've got quality as in they've got like technical
yeah, yeah,
ability.
yeah,
Uh, but no, they don't. As a team, they don't have. They're just not very good, basically.
yeah. They put
Reece
in some
James
decent
came off again.
performances, but
Reece James got another hamstring injury.
just
Um,
what is it with that guy?
I know, man. Pretty sad. His career is just, ugh, just kind of gutting, really. Just kind of sad.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and now apparently Pochettino said he wants more players. Like he wants a big clear
Oh
out in
my
January, which is
god.
just hilarious.
Oh my god. I can't. I can't. I can't do that. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to sit there and talk about 10 Chelsea transfers over the next month.
No, I know that's the
I'm
thing.
not
It's
doing it.
like every transfer conversation. It's like Chelsea are there because they're always bloody signing someone. But it's so boring. It's like it doesn't matter. I don't
Yeah.
care. They can
The only
sign
difference
everyone,
with
basically.
this and United like 3 years ago was that United 3 years ago wouldn't sign any of the thousands of players they got linked with. So you
Yeah,
might hear about United in the news every week wanting to sign someone, but you knew it wasn't going to happen, so you were fine to ignore it. But now,
yeah,
whenever Chelsea are interested in someone, you have to actually pay attention,
yeah.
and it's annoying because they're linked to like twice as many players as they actually sign, but then you've got to pay attention to every one of them
I know
because
you've
they're going
actually
to
got to talk about them because they actually do sign them.
yeah. And then they don't play them, so it's actually pointless talking about them because
Yeah,
you're talking about a career that's not going to happen and games that aren't going to be played, at least by the individuals. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just
It's a weird one.
get them
It's
out.
a
I
weird
don't
one.
want them.
They're just bad.
Yeah. Next team.
Um, so the next game was another weird one. Was Fulham West Ham. Second 5-0 win in a row for Fulham. Who the fuck saw that coming?
I'd argue I almost saw it coming.
No, you didn't.
Almost. I saw. I was
No,
like.
you didn't.
I was like.
No, you came nowhere near.
I almost did. Almost. I was like. You know, West Ham, Nottingham Forest. They're basically just the same thing. So I thought, but West Ham are a little bit better, so I was like, oh, 3-0 instead. But I was on the right track. I was on the right
Yeah,
track.
to be fair, yeah.
So I'll
Well,
take
I
that.
went for a draw, so I was nowhere near. I was truly nowhere near. Yeah, you went 3-2 Fulham,
Yeah.
which is a good shout. I mean, I don't think anyone expected West Ham to be that bad, and West Ham
Mm.
they weren't as bad as 5-0. To be fair,
Yeah, no, it
um,
was a bit of a. It was a bit like the Villa Brighton game in that it
yeah,
was a bit more balanced than well, I don't know. On the balance of play, it was not as one-sided as it appeared on the scoreline,
no, it wasn't. Yeah, it
but
was Fulham just one of them where
yeah,
Fulham just scored at
they were just
everything.
clinical. Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, West Ham were kind of surprisingly poor. They tend to be a team that plays quite well away. I think the thing with West Ham is that I've got this idea in my head that they're defensively solid, but they're just not. They play
they
kind of
used to be.
defensively, but they're not actually very good at defending. Yeah, this year they have that kind of reputation for a reason, but they've just actually not been good at defending this year. They've still got the danger on the counter,
Mm.
but they're not keeping clean sheets
Well, they've
at
lost
all.
Rice, haven't they? So
Yeah,
yeah,
true. Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
they've replaced him with Eddie Alvarez, who I'm like
He's been really
he's
good. Yeah,
yeah
I mean
he's a
he
good
wasn't
quality
playing the game, to be fair,
player. Oh, okay.
which could explain things.
Yeah, I mean I think he's probably better than their results suggest. I think he's got a time to bed in, and he's used to playing in more possession-based sides as well.
Yeah,
So
he has looked good. Whenever I've seen West Ham, he has
yeah,
actually looked
I
good
remember
and
talking about
settled.
him
But
yeah earlier on in the season, just saying I didn't realise he had such good feet on him. Like
yeah, he's much more kind of well-rounded player than actually probably a really really smart signing replacing Rice because they do look very similar in terms of profile.
yeah,
Um,
almost wish we had kind of signed him as like a
yeah,
Kamara backup or
that
rotation
would be
option.
perfect. Yeah,
He
that
would have
would
been
be
great.
perfect.
But
But yeah, West Ham were missing him against Fulham, which could explain why they were particularly fragile. Um, But yeah, I mean, Fulham, another unpredictable team because nobody really sees two 5-0s in a row coming, especially from a team where you kind of think that they're not very good at scoring.
yeah, that's generally
Um,
the perception. Them and Wolves have kind of had that perception for a little bit, possibly a little bit undeserved now. I think last year it was
I think now,
definitely
yeah,
a point, especially in the second half of the year. But yeah, I think at this point you kind of have to say Wolves. Yeah, they're not amazing at scoring goals, but the team is at a good enough level at the moment and is functional enough that it will at least score one or two goals in most games. And then Fulham, I just have completely torn apart their reputation and said fuck you. So, like, as well to do it with Jimenez, Raul Jimenez starting up top is the most impressive part because Willian has been good in the past and just kind of dropped down to like a slightly above average level and is now just seemingly getting back to his better levels. But he did it for a long time, so you always knew it was there. And
Yeah.
then Iwobi has always kind of been decent, never really fully dropped off, so to speak. So, for him to be performing well is not necessarily a surprise either. But then to have Raul there, Raul Jimenez, who's had like one good season, two good seasons at most that I can
Well,
remember in the Prem.
he was really good at Wolves. I think he had one really great season at Wolves, one
Yeah,
very solid season, but then he got the head injury,
yeah,
and it kind of just ruined his career.
yeah. He was
Yeah,
just terrible after that. Couldn't do anything.
yeah, he went from like a solid 10, 15 goal striker, even could be pushing 20 goals. That was his level in his one really good season at Wolves,
Yeah,
to immediately like couldn't score a single goal. But I think he scored in I think the last two games. Potentially could be finding a bit of form. It's hard to kind of say how that kind of injury affects you.
yeah. It
Like
certainly
how
knocked your
long does it take to recover?
confidence.
I think, yeah, because it's more complex than a purely physical injury. It's like once you once you're over the pain and you bed back into the routine, then you're kind of there. But yeah, with something like that, you're kind of more of a psychological element. So it's hard to say how long it might take a player. But maybe with him getting a couple goals now, he's starting to. Even if he's back to like half his best, they've got a decent striker. If he can be supported by the players around him, that's kind of enough for a team
Yeah,
at
well,
Fulham's level.
that was another part of it as well. You're looking at Andres Pereira. That was a player that we all thought was finished, and then came into Fulham last year and just sort of
Yeah, it looked really good.
was a bit revived. Seemed to just show the fundamental skills that you need as a number 10. Harry Wilson's come back into the side looking great. Then Tom Kearney's still Tom Kearney somehow. Polina's still playing well. That
Yeah.
defense is still somehow playing well despite like having Tim Ream and Anthony Robinson and
Well,
Kenny
they signed
Tete.
Calvin Bassey, didn't they? And
Yeah,
he looks pretty solid. So
yeah. Well, I was always
um,
fairly impressed with Tosin Arabadayo,
yeah, that's
and
the thing. Arab Bio looks quite good, and they're playing. Bassey's kind of taking Tim Ream's place at the moment, and
yeah,
that is quite a pretty solid centre back pairing. To be fair, for a mid-table team, that's strong. Like that's fine. It's a good level.
yeah,
And Leno's obviously a good keeper, so it's kind of like yeah they've got Castagno at right back as well. That's kind of like low key a
yeah.
really good signing.
He's decent signing, yeah. So
Yeah,
they've just kind of added slowly to that squad a
yeah.
couple of sort of cheap knockoff, not knockoffs, cheap cast-offs like Leno
Fuck
and
off.
Castagna. Yeah, not knockoffs. I don't know who they're knocking off, but yeah, they've got Castagna and Leno like and Pereira and Willian. All these like and even Iwobi even like all
Yeah,
come
they're
into that. They're
smart,
just
smart
like
signings because they're quality,
yeah,
but they've fallen out of favor and they're like
quality
kind of
that
better than their value suggests.
yeah never really. I wouldn't say that it was quality that's like obvious, but quality where it was like there's two or three things they do really well, but in the modern game, you say someone's a certain position, there's this perception that they have to be good at all these different things. So they were undervalued in
Yeah,
that way rather than
yeah, yeah,
necessarily just being an obviously great player that was undervalued just because they weren't
yeah,
playing, for example.
yeah.
So they pick people up like that, and then very much is the case for Raul Jimenez. Sorry, not Raul Jimenez. God, I didn't know how funny that would be until I said it. Um, yeah, but wait, what was I even talking about? Yeah, with him at least, he just like was completely finished. No one
Wow.
wanted to pay any money for him, and then yeah, they've just managed to turn him into well, at least it seems a consistent striker at the moment. But he's only been doing this for 3 or 4 games now, so we'll have to see how it progresses for the
Yeah,
season.
it's too early to say really,
Yeah,
but um, but yeah, but that's the thing. He's supported by actually. all round pretty good squad, and they relied on Mitrovic too much last season. They've now filled the squad out to the point where they don't have to rely on the striker. But if they've got a striker who's scoring, a reasonable amount of goals, whether it be like a kind of 10 goals a season rate, then they've got a squad to be, mid-table comfortably, really,
Yeah,
and that's where they are. So yeah, I think we can. We talked about undervaluing Fulham before. I always tend to do it just based on some kind of subconscious preconception, but they're actually very solid at the moment. So
do you know what? I was just going to say to you, a fixture I'm really looking forward to is Fulham Bournemouth. I,
is that this week?
no, 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 no. But
Oh
just
right,
just
just in
thinking of
general.
like teams where they're at the moment in the league, two
Yeah,
lower
yeah,
lower mid table teams who are looking really really good at the moment. Who I just want to see what happens when those two
that
come
would be yeah,
together.
because they've got different styles as well. It's like two well coached teams in two different styles, different strengths,
Yeah, both flying at the
both on
moment.
good form, good confidence. Like yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a fun game.
But yeah, well, it's the Boxing Day fixture. They're away at Bournemouth. I would have preferred the
Oh,
other way
cool.
around because Fulham obviously have had their 5-0s at home, and Bournemouth have won
Yeah,
3-0 away,
yeah,
and things like that. So I would have preferred it Bournemouth going to Fulham. But either way, I'm excited for that fixture.
yeah. That'd be a good one.
At least if they're still playing, well, you never know. They might have both lost like 3-0 in consecutive games by that point.
Maybe.
Um, we don't
Yeah,
know,
that's the thing
but
with these teams. It's like they do have the potential to also do that. That's why undervaluing Fulham happens because it's like okay, they're sometimes good, but I could equally just see them being crap. It's like I don't
yeah.
know. Last game we'll talk about in detail is Spurs Newcastle.
Yeah, well, I can't speak in too much detail. I didn't watch this one. I was at the family Christmas dinner out
Nice,
meeting a mermaid. Um,
oh, classic.
yeah, I kept having to check the score because my brother's phone didn't have
Oh yeah,
internet, so I had to keep going. So that's the score. Yeah, they're winning. Yeah, fine. Yeah, whatever. But ultimately, Spurs were playing very well and deserved the
Spurs were
victory.
just good. Yeah,
Yeah,
they kind of just did the Spurs thing. They came out uh, really quickly, really intense, really attacking. Um, Crucially, they kind of got that fairly early goal, which they need because they do have a tendency to drop off in the second halves of games.
yeah.
They were 2-0 up at half time. And
But
yeah, they were just good. They were very
yeah,
dominant, but they were also, I mean, yeah, no, they were just dominant. But there is a bit of a caveat with Newcastle's away form at the moment. It's absolutely dreadful.
and they are so knackered. They are
Yeah,
so
man.
knackered.
Yeah, Trippier looks
Um,
like Richard Dunn right now or something. Like he just
yeah.
looks
Well, he's got
so
himself
out of
suspended now, so he's going to get a little rest.
it.
I don't know if Joe Linton or Lascelles also are suspended with those yellows, but
I
you could
don't
tell
know.
it was a good day for Spurs when Richarlison scores 2 goals because I
Yeah,
mean, what did he'd scored one before in his Tottenham career or two in like 50
yeah, something like
games.
that. Yeah, something like that.
It's
Yeah.
horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, he missed a banging chance against was it against Villa a couple of weeks ago. It was a header
Possibly.
that just skimmed the post, but it was a real good chance. Um, yeah, he's a bit of a weird striker. He's definitely not a clinical kind of a striker, but he is one of those where he's got the ability where if you give him enough chances, if he's having a good game, he will score. And that Spurs did just create an absolute
Hmm.
shitload of chances
Did they sign
um,
him before or after the World Cup?
before.
Before. Okay.
Yeah,
Was it that summer? Was it last summer?
I think it. No, it was before last
Sorry,
summer.
not last summer. The summer before last
Yeah,
summer.
summer before. I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So he's been there
Um,
nearly a season and a half now.
yeah, he's had like injury stuff, and he's kind of never really found his place in the team. What's interesting is that they played Son on the left.
Yeah, I did notice that,
Um,
and he was responsible for setting up the first 2 goals.
yeah, Son had a really good game on the left, which like he doesn't usually do. He under Conte anyway, he played out on the left and just looked a little bit naff. But he played really well, and I wonder whether if Richarlison can like settle himself into a role in this Tottenham squad with Son out left and him up top, then maybe we'll see him
just look more
improve and
dangerous,
kind of
didn't he?
live up to that player that people are hoping, Tottenham fans are hoping he's going to be. But I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. Having Richarlison in form just gives Spurs more options, makes them look a little bit more dangerous
Yeah,
because
it's
it
because
means they
when I
can.
watch him, I do think he's a good player, and he's like, I don't know, he's quite a likable player. I think.
Yeah, well, we've all seen those moments in the World Cup and things like that where he just
Yeah,
scores outrageous goals or does something incredible.
yeah, he seems to
Um,
be the kind of player who relies on confidence quite a lot, and I think those players also are tend to be the type of players who rely on having a kind of dedicated and maybe quite strict role in a team. A bit like Watkins, how when he's allowed to drift out left and stuff, he still kind of looks useful, but he's not at his best. Whereas he relies on he is a confident striker, but he's also massively improved by just having a kind of strict, dedicated role, like stay in the middle, stay in the box,
yeah,
cause havoc. Like that's your game. Just stick to that. And if Richarlison can kind of figure out that position as his in the squad and get in a run of games, then maybe we'll see him finally kind of live up to what Spurs were hoping he was going to be.
yeah,
But
potentially.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
can you
Spurs
imagine
Spurs were good.
a front line of Kulusevski, Richarlison in form, Son, and Madison behind him? It's not going to be
Yeah,
fun.
pretty crazy in it. And then Brennan Johnson coming off the bench as well.
Well,
Um,
I don't know if he's if he's really that good.
I think he's definitely got something about him. He had a
Yeah,
good game at Newcastle. I think he's not obviously in that front four. I don't think he's getting in the team, but I think off the bench he's obviously got a lot of pace.
yeah. He's
He's got a
pace,
kind of
pacey,
decent
two-footed,
shot on him. He's not like you wouldn't say, I don't know. He's one of them where I wouldn't trust him as an out and out striker in a team
or
because
winger.
I don't know whether.
To be honest,
Yeah, but he's that's what I mean. He's kind of
you
somewhere
want
in
him.
between where he's quite
Yeah,
a good finisher, but not kind of good enough for a striker. And he's an all right dribbler. He's fast, but he's not
yeah,
really a kind of winger.
yeah.
Um,
You want him in that kind of false nine, two up top kind of role, where he gets to
kind of,
play off
yeah.
someone else and
But we
get
were
in those
linked with
half
him. It's probably
spaces.
because he would actually be perfect in that Diaby role. That's probably what we were thinking when we were linked with
Yeah,
him.
yeah. He's bit of a cheaper Diaby option, I guess, but clearly
Yeah,
nowhere near the talent level of a Diaby, I don't think. So
no,
it's a
no.
bit. Yeah. What did
But I mean,
Spurs pay
I
for
think
him in the
he's.
end? It was like 50 mil, wasn't it?
It was a lot. I think he's just. That was just because Forest didn't want to sell. They did probably overpay a little bit, but
Oh
it's
no, they
often the way
definitely
when.
overpaid. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the talisman of Forest, wasn't he? So it's kind of one of them
Yeah.
where you just have to.
The thing is, he didn't even have a
Um,
great season at Forest. He had a well, I mean, I think it was he had a pretty average season, but because he was young and because he was in a Forest side that had just come up, that
yeah, that's
kind
the
of
thing. I think.
built on this narrative that he was a really good young player. And he's not a bad young player, but he's not 50 million quid's worth of young player. Like,
Yeah, probably not. It is. I think it's hard to tell with him because, like you say, he's played in a Forest team who were, not free scoring by any means, not a very good attacking team, and yeah, and then he's moved to Tottenham for 50 million, which you kind of think like, surely that's too much money. But he is young and he has only really played for for Forest in the Premier League, who just they barely scraped survival and they didn't score many goals, so it's hard to say really. He had a really good season in the Championship with Forest, but again,
yeah,
there's caveats with that. So I don't know. Well, it remains to be seen with him, but I think he's a good option off the bench for them. To be fair,
yeah, absolutely. What do you think is Spurs' ceiling this year? If we were to say they didn't sign any more players and they got Van der Ven and Madison back in January, what do you think that they could do?
their ceiling kind of scares me. To be fair,
Really?
um, yeah, I think it's really hard to predict because I don't know how much how they've kind of been dropping off in games and they don't change the game plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know how much of a factor their kind of drop in intensity is. I do think Ange is a really good manager. Um,
Yeah.
but then at Celtic, he struggled in Europe, but I think that was kind of a thing of he doesn't compromise on his principles. And when you've got much worse players, that really hurts you. But Tottenham do actually have a really strong squad. So I think they'll be really strong. I think I just don't know how much of a factor the depth thing is going to be and the kind of dropping off in at the end of games because of their intense kind of style is going to be. And like sometimes I think pragmatism in a really really strong league like the Prem is helpful. We've seen it with Emery and kind of flexibility and things like that they're useful. So I don't know. I think they could get fourth. Um,
So you don't think there's any possibility of them finishing above a sorry, a Liverpool, Arsenal, City?
well, so you said that like if they didn't have the injuries, I think
No, as in
so.
if they don't sign anyone and if they get those two back in January, which I think is when they get them back,
Yeah.
just based off that.
No, I don't think. I don't think they're Arsenal, Liverpool, City. I think there's potentially they could finish. I think they'll still rival us for fourth, fifth. I think it will be one of us two, fourth, fifth.
Fair enough. I I think that at full strength, I think they could be as good as Liverpool are at the moment. I think full strength Liverpool is probably better than them, but and that's not to say as in Liverpool's best 11 that they can put out at the moment. I mean, best 11 that they've had in recent years, sort of thing. You know,
Really?
Liverpool. No. As in Liverpool in recent years would be better than Spurs
All right. Yeah.
fully
Yeah.
fit now, but
Yeah.
Liverpool this year at their best are probably
Yeah.
a similar level to Spurs at their
Well, yeah. I
best
mean, Liverpool's a hard one, isn't it? Because
this
like
year.
we don't really know how good this Liverpool team are. Because like they've kind of had a transitional period and they look really good now, but I don't know their squad doesn't seem that settled. They don't seem as settled as like Arsenal say. So would you say Tottenham are in the same level as bracket as Arsenal, or do you think it's like Arsenal City? Then there's a bit of a gap.
I think it's like Arsenal, City, and then I think you have like Tottenham, Liverpool, Newcastle, and Villa. All,
Yeah,
and I think you could probably even split those two into another tier of like Liverpool, Tottenham, Villa, Newcastle in terms of just generally if you put the level of the squad and level of the performances together, you'd probably match those up. Then
yeah, I'd
obviously
probably
those kinds of things are quite fluid though, you know, with a couple more signings
yeah,
here and
yeah, yeah,
there, and
yeah,
say Villa Park's redevelopment, all of a sudden the size of a club and quality of a squad, you're putting us up there with maybe Tottenham and Liverpool. Um,
yeah,
like these things
yeah.
can change.
I'd probably agree with that. To be fair, I think um, because they've when you look at Tottenham's recent history, they've had Champions League in several seasons. You know, in the last say 10 or so years, and they've got this new stadium, and so you know they are in that kind of bracket of financially they're a big power because obviously you can only spend as much relative to your revenue, but their
Yeah,
revenue now because of the Champions League they've had over the last 10 years and this massive new stadium, their revenue now it allows them to really be a power in terms of spending, which does kind of separate them from Villa Newcastle, I think.
yeah, it's kind of reached that point now where you can have like a full-fledged summer window and then still have millions and millions left over if you're
Yeah,
one of those sort of top revenue
yeah,
generating clubs in the Premier League.
yeah. No, I'd probably broadly agree with that. I think I'd probably put Liverpool in a slightly higher bracket because I think Klopp has, you know, been proven to be at a super high level, also adaptable when he struggles with squad issues, whatever. Whereas maybe wouldn't this season anyway. I wouldn't put Tottenham there yet because I don't know what Ange's kind of top end is, and I don't know how he's going to deal with when you have to adapt with your squad and things like that. So I think I'd probably still separate him based on the manager. Um, but if Ange proves to be, you know, the manager that his current performance has been suggesting, then there's no reason like next season, you know, Tottenham invest more in the squad. Like I could definitely see them challenging with Liverpool and potentially Arsenal City as well. Um, yeah, no, they're pretty scary to be fair.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right now, suppose we'll just skim over the remaining fixtures. As we're just on Liverpool, they managed to see off Palace at Selhurst Park. I forgot the name of
yeah,
Palace's stadium for half a second there.
covered it.
And yeah, I mean, we kind of said before last week that we thought, well, at least I don't know. I thought you agreed, but that Palace might be able to do something against Liverpool, and they looked honestly for you know the majority of the game like they were probably creating the slightly better chances, but ultimately I think Liverpool just had the quality to come through. So
Yeah, it was. Away games do tend to be hard even for the top teams, but when you've got Liverpool's quality, but yeah, Palace were good. We both went 2-1, both got the correct score, and that's it. Kind of, I guess, suppose, basically went how we predicted it would go.
Take a
Uh,
bonus point.
yep, take that. So Brighton Burnley both got this one wrong. Both went Brighton win.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, they probably deserved it, to be honest. Like, they completely dominated them. From possession and XG perspective, shots, I think they had like nearly 30 shots. It was, yeah, it was kind of almost quintessentially Brighton to
yeah,
just,
that's the thing. Like, do we have to start learning from these Brighton results that they can consistently dominate teams possession wise, create a good number of chances, but they're not getting the results out of it? Like, do we have
yeah.
to start factoring that in?
You
It's
remember
really
when I
hard to
said,
because like they're
that's,
just good. They're still
yeah,
good. It's
it's kind of like when I said they're just Chelsea with a lower individual quality.
like,
They kind of, that's almost like,
they're kind of Chelsea
it's,
at another the next stage of development. Like they're like what Chelsea want to be in terms of how they play, but then they don't have the quality to kind of convert those kind of like if Chelsea were creating the chances and getting the XG that Brighton were, you'd think Chelsea would be winning games.
no. I think that they are almost the same in that. Because Chelsea do create often a lot of XG, and they do hold of a lot of
They do. I
possession,
think Brighton are more
and they just
consistent. I
don't
guess is
score.
what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, it's because they dominate games, and they just don't. They're not clinical enough at the moment to
Yeah.
follow through with that, and then they end up with these poor results, and often drawing at home and losing away, which is essentially the same thing as each other. It's yeah, it's weird, and it's funny because it's come from Brighton actually being very very clinical and scoring a lot of goals to all of a sudden just not. And I mean they did lose
It's
a
a bit
couple
of
of
a weird one,
players,
yeah.
but they've got a lot of their attacks still there, so it's not that different. It's a bit
No,
strange
it's
that
a strange one.
it's so different. And they were
I
good at
mean,
the start of
we
the season.
yeah, it is. It is kind of doesn't make a lot of sense because they've got quality players and they're creating, like you say, 30 shots. There's no reason they shouldn't be like winning that game comfortably. But it might be the types of chances they're creating. Maybe like when we played them last season, we defended really really tight in our own box, and that seems to be a way to nullify Brighton, is if you just defend really narrow and just get bodies in the box. Because I suppose I don't know, something to do with the style of play. Because they like to get to the bylines, and if you pack the box, those cutbacks aren't going to be finding the men really. Um, yeah, it's a bit of a confusing one. Burnley did well to get a point. I mean, it's a pretty good point for Burnley, really. Um,
Yeah, it's fair
I
enough.
suppose defensively, Brighton as well. Like they're struggling this season. It's putting pressure on them to score goals as well, which might come into it.
Yeah.
Um,
Sheffield United getting there. Is that their first, second win? Second win?
Second win of the season, yeah,
Fair
yeah.
play. I mean, what did we predict? 1-1 was it? I thought I predicted 1-1 or
I
1-0.
went 2-1 Sheffield United. I got the
Oh, you
I
got a point.
predicted
Oh,
based
fair
on
play.
yeah. Well, just I watched highlights of the Liverpool game, and they just played quite well. They
Yeah,
seemed
you
to.
did mention you thought they would be able to do something.
Yeah, I mean, it was still a very even game. It was kind of a case of, in terms of chances created and shots and stuff, it's all very even.
Yeah,
It was just
yeah.
a case of they scored a good goal and Brentford couldn't get it in the net. But yeah, they were good. They created enough to get a 1-0 victory, basically.
It was a bit of a
Um,
screamer from McAtee, wasn't it?
it was a nice goal, yeah. Um,
He's the City youngster that's there, right?
yeah. He's a good player.
Is he on loan
Um,
or
he's
permanent?
on loan. Yeah, he's
Okay.
been there for 2 years on loan.
Oh, fair enough.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, he's a good
good
player,
for.
and Brentford, as we said, might struggle without Mbuemo. They didn't really create that much. Mope up front is just a bit hopeless, isn't it? Really.
I remember when
Yeah.
we were watching them play Brighton before the City game, and you saw Malpai stepping up for the penalty, and you had a fit. I think it's fair enough. Like he hasn't. I don't think he's scored a Premier League goal in quite a while, and has missed some very easy chances as well. It's just a bit.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's one of them where even if you create chances, he's just not going to score them, man.
It's-
Um,
I,
yeah.
It's disappointing from Brentford as well. I mean, I know they were missing Mbuemo, but like, is there
Well,
really
you
not
think
enough
they're a well-coached
quality?
team. You just think they'd be able to handle that.
Yeah, I think
Um,
perhaps people are just finding out a bit about Frank, or perhaps it is just a genuine lack of quality.
I mean, yeah, when you look at their squad, there's actually they've got a few injuries, and there's actually there's not a whole load of quality there. It is quite a sort of they don't spend any money, do they? They make kind of
Mm,
smart signings, but they don't have a lot of money to spend, and you can just kind of tell when they've got a few injuries. And yeah, I do think Sheffield United, they're coming off a good performance against Liverpool. It's going to give them confidence. They're at home, new manager bounce, all that stuff. It's a hard game, to be fair. Contextually, it's a difficult game for any team to go into, I think.
yeah, I
Uh,
suppose. And
so
then
yeah,
Wolves Forest,
Wolves Forest, yeah.
quite a nice change to see with Wolves actually sort of managing to dominate possession, because they do have a few
Mm,
technically sort of not gifted but adept players in their squad with the likes of Sarabia and Cunha and players like that. So it's quite nice to see them take a bit more advantage of that. But yeah, Forest just being inconsistent as per usual. You know, going away to Wolves and getting a result has been quite difficult for a few good teams this year. And then,
yeah,
for Forest to come and do that off the back of a 5-0 loss to Fulham,
yeah.
just, yeah, makes you question the Premier League in general. did I predict? I almost went for a 3-2 on that one. I kind of looked at it and
Um,
went, no, Wolves aren't scoring 3 goals in a game.
yeah, you went 2-1.
Um, so yeah,
You went 2-1 Wolves. I went 1-0 Wolves. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the prediction was the Wolves win, really, wasn't it?
yeah, I don't think it was sensible, to be fair.
It was hard to go with Nottingham Forest in this game, but again, they had that bad result, but then they had like the fans and the players all rallying behind the manager and stuff, and sometimes you do see teams react, especially teams that are kind of tight knit. You see them react after bad results. So
Yeah,
yeah, and they are an inconsistent team. They're obviously capable of getting good results, as we know all too well. Um, so we've done Everton, Chelsea, done Villa. So Luton City is the only one
yes,
we haven't.
that's the last one really. Much closer, wasn't it, than we thought?
Yeah, I thought City would bounce back with a big win.
I
Haaland was
suppose,
out for the
yeah,
game,
we
which
neither of us
nobody
knew
saw
Haaland was going to
coming.
be out. I
No,
was specifically more annoyed about that because I captained him, and I was picking between my vice captains, and I was like, well, Salah, but we did think Palace might be able to do something, so I was like, oh, he might not get involved. I'll give it to Hwang Hee Chan because they'll definitely beat Forest at home.
oh, damn.
And if they do, Chan will be involved because he's always involved. So I was like, yep, go for that, and yeah, missed out on that juicy
Gutting.
13
Yeah.
points from Mo Salah.
Yeah, so yeah, Haaland was out. Kind of a, I mean, yeah, we expected City to be more comfortable, but I suppose with Haaland out and the fact, Luton's performances at home coming off a tight result against Arsenal, City won. They were relatively comfortable, but they didn't create a whole load of great chances. Luton
Yeah,
had some moments, managed to get the goal, so you probably could have saw that coming. If you saw that Haaland was out and you saw City's form and then Luton's result against Arsenal, you could probably have seen, a 2-1 or something like that.
yeah.
Um,
I think they just came into this game essentially looking to regain control. I think
yeah, it's like we
after
just
that
need to
Villa
win
result,
this.
it was
Yeah,
just it was unusual territory. They'd never really been in a game where they had the control and the flow of the game taken away from them. They've lost games before, yeah, sure, and they've kind of battled end to end in games like against Chelsea, but they haven't played in a game where the other team's just gone. Some it's our turn today,
yeah,
and then they've just kind of had to watch. So I
yeah,
think in this game, it wasn't about bouncing back. It wasn't about sort of a show of strength. It was just everyone. Let's just reset, calm down.
yeah. It was just
Like,
get the job done.
we're Manchester
Yeah,
City. We have fundamentally an incredible squad and a great way of playing. Let's just go, cut down back slightly to the basics a bit, and just see what we can achieve. Because you can see they went back to a back four, almost with two full-backs as well. They had a midfield full of midfielders, and they had a front line full of attackers. So they kind of just went back to basic football logic and
Yeah.
went, right, let's just win this game. Let's just
Yeah.
play a game of football where we don't lose or draw, and we'll
Yeah.
see what happens next week. Um, and they got the job done. So fair play to them.
Yeah.
Like, what can you say?
Yeah. So speaking of next week,
Next week,
yeah,
what kind of fixtures
next.
have we got?
So Friday night we have
Oh, Friday
Forest at
night.
home to Spurs.
Oh God, no! What a difficult fixture to call. Oh, Forest, I hate you so much. I actually am starting to resent Forest, like legitimately.
Why? Just because they're impossible to figure out.
Yeah, you can't figure them out because of that stupid result they got against us,
Yeah.
and because their kit's annoying as well.
The kit.
Yeah,
Kit's right.
it frustrates me. Frustrates me.
Okay. Fair enough. That's a topic for another day, I think.
Anyway, yeah, we should
Um,
probably be predicting these games.
yeah. What do you think's actually going to happen in the game? Kit.
I want them to win because it suits us.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I have to be. You've got to be careful with these kind of fixtures, haven't you?
But I feel like it's going to be something like a maybe a 2-1 Spurs, 1-1. I can just see Forest being defensively solid and Spurs
Yeah, it is a really hard one. Like
definitely
it's quite
scoring.
predictable in terms of how the game. Spurs are obviously going to be on the front foot first. They're going to create some chances. Forest are going to defend. They can defend. Usually tend to defend quite well, especially at home. So, like, do Spurs put it in the net? How efficient are Forest on the counter? Because sometimes they're like good, and sometimes they're kind of naff.
Yeah, so many questions to be answered.
Ugh.
It is a tough one. I think sometimes you just got to go with a home win, don't you?
Ooh, I like it. I like it. I like
Sometimes you
it.
do. Sometimes you
I
do.
like it. I
Um,
like it.
so I think you should.
I do like it. I'm thinking 2-2 is in my brain right now, but I am
Really?
tempted to go for the home win just because I kind of want it.
Yeah, I kind of want it, but I
Um,
don't have the balls to go for it. I don't think.
it would be a big call, especially with Spurs coming off a good result. But then the Spurs are beating Newcastle at home at the moment isn't that impressive, really. Um,
All right, we need to say something because we're going to be sat here for 20
God,
minutes
I
thinking about
know.
this game.
Um,
I'm going to say boring 1-1. Oh no, 2-1 Spurs. 2-1 Spurs.
ooh, kidoki. 2 Spurs. I'm gonna go for a home win. Home
It's
win.
good.
That's
I
what I'm
like
doing.
it because it means we're
I
doing
do.
different
I
things.
like Forest because I like them because they're one of those teams where like their stadium is a bit of a fortress and they're all behind the manager, and I think maybe that spirit get through.
Do you know, I've really set myself up to hate Forest here because I know they're reasonably good at home, and so
Yeah,
I've
now you're
put the
just gonna hate
idea,
them even more.
yeah, I've put the idea of them winning into your head, so that if they do win, you're going to get the points, and I'm not, and they're going to have gone against my prediction, and I'm going to put the
Uh,
idea of them doing that into your head. I'm just gonna go absolutely mental if they win.
okay, so Bournemouth Luton. This would be a tricky
Ooh,
one if Luton were at home, but I think
yeah, it's
with
this could be
Bournemouth's
fun.
form, yeah,
I think 2-0 Bournemouth.
yeah, I think that's a good shout. I think you would expect it to be fairly comfortable for Bournemouth at home. Do you
Yeah,
see Luke scoring? I mean,
I don't
not
think
really.
so. I think
Not
like
really.
they've done well to score some goals at home recently, but away from
I
home
think
against a
I'm going
Bournemouth
to have to
side
go for the
that's
same
absolutely
result, to be
flying at
honest.
the moment.
Yeah,
I
I
just think
think
they'll
I'm going
keep
to
the
have to go
clean
with 2
sheet
nil
and
as
they'll
well.
have too much for Luton. So
Yeah, yeah, nice straightforward one. That's a change, isn't it?
yeah,
And then again, it'll end up something completely random, ridiculous will end up happening, won't it?
absolutely.
Um, Chelsea, Sheffield United could be a tricky one again.
Ooh, Chelsea, Chelsea, Chelsea.
Sheffield away from home, which is like takes away, but then Chelsea are shit at home as well. It's like,
I'm gonna
but
go
Sheffield are still quite bad.
4-1 Chelsea. I think.
Whoa.
Yeah. Thing is with Chelsea, when they're at home against those kind of Lutons and Burnleys and things, that's when Raheem Sterling starts getting more space and things
Yeah.
just start flowing a little better because
Mm.
they're just able to break through that a little bit easier.
I think I'm going to go 2-1. I think Sheffield will try and make themselves hard to beat. And they're
Yeah,
coming
it
off a
would it
couple
would
of
make
decent
sense, but
performances.
like Chelsea are inconsistent and they will probably have more big wins and high scoring games this year where people start to think all of a sudden that they're, back on track and hitting form, but then
Yeah. Yeah.
it'll just vanish again. So
Okay.
that's my
I've
logic.
gone 2-1. You're going 4-1. City Palace.
City at home.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's not much more to say really, is there? Um,
Not really.
when Jordan Ayew's out, you've got no clout. um, yeah, 3-0 maybe, something like that, you could
Yeah,
say.
I was thinking 4.
Depends, I mean, if Haaland's back, it could be 4.
I think Haaland is out. He's not. Well, he's not.
It's 50-50 on FPL.
Apparently, he's not travelled. He wasn't in training today, and He's not travelling for the Champions League game.
Yeah.
But that could be just be like precautionary because they don't they're through the groups. They don't need him anyway. But yeah, I mean, if Haaland's back, you'd maybe be back in a big win. But Palace can kind of defend. They're like well organised.
Yeah, I don't see him scoring, to be honest. So
No,
I'm going to go
no,
just a nice, simple, clean 3-0 City. I think after that reset they did at Luton, I think this is where they start to pick up and just go, okay, some of the things that we've tried to tinker with maybe didn't work game in, game out. So we'll go back to the basics now, just make sure we get results, and then we can bring the tinkering back further into the season if we need to for individual games.
mm,
And I think often the tinkering that is done by Pep early on in the season normally comes into play more significantly in the later Champions League stages rather than the Premier League.
yeah. It is almost like he's figuring things out. He's like he knows he's got the quality to win games, and he can afford himself a bit of kind of like
Yeah,
figuring out stuff
like
so that it's all building towards a 10-game winning run at the end.
yeah, I think what he's doing in those first 10, 15 games of the Premier League season where he tries some different things and occasionally it fucks up is he's essentially just using that as like an extended pre-season
Yeah,
where
it
he's
is like that.
he's
Yeah,
being like a bit of an academic in a way. He's doing experiments and saying, if I move this here, if I change this here, how does it work in game? Where does it shift our weaknesses to, etc.
yeah.
I think that's kind of what he does, and I think we saw that really those tactics and those tinkering changes that he makes come into play in Champions League stages last year when we saw John Stones and coming into that midfield, playing, getting a lot more forward, almost playing as a number 8 at times, and Rodri taking up positions on the edge of the box, scoring goals. That was something that
Mm,
at first we saw being played with in the Premier League earlier on in the season, and then really came to play its role in those later Champions League games where they got themselves over the line. So I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see that kind of 5 centre back like formation that they do with like the 2 in front and 3 behind and things like that start to come into play in those Champions League games perhaps, and
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
it'd be
probably.
interesting. So
Yeah, you're
three
going
nil, 3-0.
3
Yeah,
nil.
yeah, we went a bit off track there, didn't we?
I want to go 3-0 as well, but it just feels shit going for the same result, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've already
Um,
copied my Bournemouth result. Come on.
but like 3-0 is just the one, isn't it?
Now, what about 3-1? They
Um,
love winning 3-1.
I was thinking, well, I'm not going to go 3-0. I'm either going 2-0 or I'm going 3-1. I was
You can
thinking,
go
can I
3
see
nil if
Palace
you want to.
scoring?
I'm not gonna
Nah,
complain.
nah, it's just boring, isn't it? I will 3-1. I think City haven't actually kept a clean sheet in quite a while, so I'll take 3-1. Newcastle Fulham.
Ooh, Newcastle at home, is it?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh God, Fulham.
5-all.
We don't know what Fulham can do away in their current form, do we? Really?
No, so most recent away games in their last five, they've played Liverpool away and they played really well actually.
Yeah.
Just lost the game, and they played Villa away, which they weren't great, but we're the best team in the league at home, and also that was quite a while ago, to be fair.
Yeah. Fuck. Okay. Um. Shit. That's gonna be tough, isn't it? I mean, I expect Newcastle to win, obviously. There's no
Yeah,
doubt about that. But
yeah.
I would just put more money on it being a high-scoring game now that I've seen what Fulham can do. So
Hmm.
probably like 3-2's obviously the obvious shout. Um,
3-2 could be a shout.
a
Um,
4-1 could be a shout if maybe Fulham perhaps show some strength early on and then drop off, or the
yeah, I don't
opposite.
know,
If
because like
Newcastle start
Newcastle are really
quickly,
struggling with fatigue as well.
yeah, it might be something that
You'd think
comes
that
on at
would
the
impact
end.
their home form as well. Like they've got a Champions League game this week, which they need to win if they want to go through the group. Um, so I'm thinking, yeah,
Could be a 4-2
maybe I'll
maybe.
go for like a 3-all.
Could be a 4-1. It's tough.
Well, tough.
Do you know what?
I'm gonna go for 2-2.
I'm gonna go for 4-1 Newcastle.
Wowzers trousers.
Just because I think Newcastle at home are going to be really strong. They're going to score goals. And I can see Forest battling well on the pitch, but I think when it comes down to it towards the end of the game, I think Newcastle will get tired and Fulham will be able to score one or two. But I don't think they'll have enough when Newcastle are in full flow to overturn them.
Fair play. Solid analysis, I'd say.
Okay,
You
next
could.
game. Burnley Everton. We haven't just recorded this and are redoing it because I couldn't remember what I was talking about. Basically, I think Everton are going to win 3-1. But it does look like recently Burnley have changed the way they play to be a bit more transitional and less expressive and possession based, as Matt just agreed with. So, cool. Next game.
Yeah, that was very smooth. It was almost like you'd already said all of that.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of for me. It's like whether Burnley score or not. I think they will at home. They kind of look a little bit improved recently. I'll go 2-1 Everton.
Fair enough. Do you think Everton can finish in Europe this year?
Uh, I think they'd be in with a shout if they hadn't got 10 points deducted from them for sure. I mean, they'd be what? They'd be 10th. They'd be a point off West Ham, 3 points off Brighton if they hadn't had the deduction. So yeah, I think if they hadn't had the deduction, sure, but nah, not from where they
Can you
are.
imagine from two great escapes to literally getting European football?
That'd be awesome, man. That would be like get Sean Dyche to like Man United or something. Like if anyone was in doubt about his quality as a manager, come on.
I mean, he would be good at United. I think.
I think he would, yeah. He'd have
I
like he'd make them into it. Everyone kind of already hates United, and he would absolutely embrace them, make them into a complete
he'd
team to
have
play.
what would he have? He'd have Maguire, Johnny Evans.
Hoyland's a good striker for him.
Yeah, he'd
He's got
have he'd have
Fernandez as a kind of
he'd have
good
two up
player
top
for him.
with Rashford
McTominay.
and Hoyland,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and then no, he'd have McTominay and Bruno Fernandes in two 10 slots, and then at DM he'd have
He's he's
Casemiro and
he's, he's
Amrabat.
playing wingers, man. He's playing wingers.
Fuck, you think?
Dyche is a wingers man
All
all
right,
day.
McTominay up front with Hoyland,
I
and then Rashford off the left, and then who would
think
they
he'd
put on
like
the right?
Garnacho. To be fair,
Might like Garnacho.
I don't know if he'd like Anthony because of like his kind of
I think he
um,
he might start with Ericsson off the right.
yeah, I could see that like traditional like wide midfielder rather than winger, like crossing from deep kind of thing.
Yeah, because you've
I
got
could see that.
Rashford being more advanced off the left,
Yeah, I could see that.
and
That
then
would look quite
McTominay
nasty.
dropping off in that front two a little bit to support the deeper wide
Yeah,
midfielder. But anyway, instead
uh,
of me trying to manage Man United, why don't we talk about
yeah. Man United new owner. If you're watching,
Jim
get Sean
Ratcliffe?
Dyche in.
Can you imagine Jim Ratcliffe and Sean Dyche having a conversation? I don't. Probably not.
After watching this,
No, I don't even mean like, just they're just very different characters. You've got this sort of more eccentric, posh billionaire, and then
yeah,
you've got. I can't. I'm not. I was about to try and do a Sean Dyche impression. There's no way. There's no way. Um,
uh,
I want to
yeah.
see Sean Dyche and Eddie Hall go for an English breakfast. Do a
Just
vlog.
go down to any Weatherspoons across the country. You can see a replica of that happen. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, probably, probably.
Right. Anyway, it's enough about whatever the fuck we were talking about. Arsenal Brighton. This could be a fun one.
Yeah, definitely. Arsenal at home, are they? Yeah.
Yeah.
I.
Wow.
It's hard because Brighton will play well. You'd think.
Yeah, it's like I'm thinking, when was the last time Brighton didn't keep more possession than their opponents? Because they've done it against City twice.
Yeah,
Like
and
when people were talking about us dominating City, and it was all like, when teams don't do that very often, and one of Brighton's done it twice in recent years.
yeah,
Um,
but I mean,
so it's like,
did they dominate them from a goals and shots perspective?
I don't
XG.
know about that,
Yeah.
but
Well, possession's one thing. Like Arsenal have kept more possession than you know. You remember that first game that where Arsenal played City, where Arsenal were absolutely flying, and
yeah,
City
yeah,
were like, "Oh, hang on, who's this?" And they hadn't played each other yet because the previous season, obviously, Arsenal was still shit. And
yeah,
then all of a
yeah,
sudden, last season they started playing well, and
yeah,
it was that first game. City basically just sat off and gave, I think it was like at least 60% of the ball to Arsenal, and they just went, all right, we'll counter attack you with Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland. What are you going to do? And they
yeah,
lost
yeah,
3-1.
yeah. I remember.
Um,
Um,
so it's not unheard of for City to give away
no,
possession,
it's just I feel like, yeah, um,
but I think
but I feel like
Arsenal.
Brighton are capable. You know,
Yeah, that's yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, Brighton are quite capable. I think Arsenal are a little bit more like Arteta's Arsenal these days are a bit more hell bent on keeping possession than
yeah,
Guardiola necessarily is. I think they're still that they haven't reached the peak form of what they want to be, and I think while they're doing that, they're going to want to be as sort of imposing as they possibly can with their style of play to help not only embed it as their identity but also help the players who have come in to learn it and to get even better with it and execute it even better. So I can see Arsenal still dominating in this fixture, and as they're so defensively solid as well, I think it's going to be pretty tough for Brighton to get anything out of this one. They did beat
yeah,
them at the Emirates at the end of last year, but I'm pretty sure Arsenal were already all over the place at that point.
yeah. Well, Arsenal fell apart a little bit towards the end of last season, didn't they?
Yeah. So I don't place too much weight on that. So to be honest, I think it's going to be a pretty simple Arsenal 2-1, like pretty standard.
Yeah,
Like they'll
I
look
was thinking.
comfortable, but Brighton will still threaten.
Yeah, I was thinking 2-0 Arsenal, because Arsenal are uh, one of the better defensive sides in the league.
Yeah.
Obviously in good form coming into before the Villa game, and we talked earlier about Brighton struggling to score, even though they play quite well. But then I thought, like you say, with Arsenal probably going to be dominating the ball, or at least keeping possession more so than Brighton, is that going to give Brighton, because they have got good players, and they've got, really fast wingers, they've got dangerous players. If they can find those spaces, I could see them scoring. It's kind of tough one to call. I
I
think I'm
think
going to go to Arsenal. I'm going to stick with two now.
yeah, I think it will be a struggle for Brighton to really get into this one because how I mentioned with Arteta being a little more hungry for possession than I think Pep is, for example, because he's a lot further along that project. Um, it's almost a more extreme version of that when you look at De Zerbi and Postacoglu, for example, where it's all about the play style. It's all about the
Yeah,
way of playing. You just keep to it exactly, no changes almost whatsoever, no matter what. And I don't really see them changing from that in this fixture, to be honest. So I think,
no, yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
they'll
Yeah,
they'll they'll, they'll threaten, but ultimately they'll just won't be able to take control of the game.
Okay. Uh, Brentford Villa. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, I mean, with this, we won't go into too much detail on this because I think we're missing a couple players, aren't we? In Douglas and
Missing Dougie and
Dean.
Dean.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mind too much missing Dean. Obviously, we've got a good replacement, and he's
Yeah,
probably
we've
the
got.
weakest link in the starting 11, other
You
than when
think?
Zaniolo starts.
Brutal, man. You've got a thing against Dean. Is it because he's French? Do you just not
No,
like
no,
French?
no. It's I don't have a thing against Dean. I like when he plays well. It makes me feel happy and confident. Um, but it's just if anyone in the team is going to be a weakness on a day where we look vulnerable at any point, it's usually him. It happened against Fulham. It happened. Oh, I can't remember what was the game where it happened. It happens against Wolves. I can't remember off the top of my head who else it was it happened against, but it's happened at least two
Yeah,
times so far
I
this
do
year
kind of know what you mean. I think
where he can get targeted.
I don't think he's necessarily weaker than any than like the rest of the level of the squad, but I think he is probably the most replaceable. Like if you're going to have a player out, you're least upset that it's him because Moreno's coming straight in, and it's quite a flexible position that left hand side. I think it would be unfair, especially given like the form he's in, the form we're in, to say that he's weaker than any of the say the back four, for example. But I think Torres has got a very defined role. Konsa has obviously got a very defined role. Dean is probably the most replaceable. So anyway, Dean's not really a worry him being out this game because we've got Moreno to come straight back in. Dougie definitely would be a worry if we were playing a team more in form, but I think Tielemans in there or maybe McGinn or whoever slots in there, I think will
Yeah.
be able to handle it.
Well, I think the main thing is having Kamara there because Kamara, it's almost like while Dougie has a more unique skill set and a higher ceiling for an individual, what Kamara brings is almost harder to find in a way.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Agreed.
like
To be fair.
it's not as hard
Yeah,
to achieve in a player, but it's harder to find in a player that
yeah,
someone's just going to be solely concerned with protecting their back form, recycling the ball, and maintaining possession. Who's not necessarily a metronome, he's going to be playing the ball forward a ton, but who's just going to be that stable, solid base for you. The only other player we have that can kind of do that is Dendonka, but he's not as mobile or as technical. So
yeah,
he does offer a drop down in the level of the squad. I think once you've got Kamara there, you can get away with saying we're going to play two eights in front of them, or we're going to play one DM beside him because he will do most of the defensive work. So you can put a Tielemans next to him, and he'll be able to progress the ball from deep, and that'll be fine. Or you can
yeah.
put a McGinn and a Ramsey, or a Tielemans and a Ramsey ahead of him in two eight slots, and he'll still mop up everything and control the midfield.
Yeah, well, that's the key thing is that while Dougie is very important, he's got a super well-rounded skill set and all that. Um, yeah, alongside Kamara, whether it's Tielemans or McGinn or Ramsey or whoever it is, they're going to offer something a bit different to Dougie, but we're not necessarily going to be missing anything crucial
Yeah,
because Kamara will still provide that security. So yeah, I don't think that's a massive worry. The players we're missing going to be more or less full strength. Brentford aren't on particularly good form. Obviously, the only thing to consider really is probably our away form. But I just think we'll have. I don't think there's any reason to think we wouldn't have enough to win this away from home. Really.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, last year they did keep us to a one-all draw because they were defensively solid, and every time they got on the ball, they countered quickly, and they did cause
yeah,
us
it can be
problems.
a hard game, but I think they were they were in good form then, and they had Tony as well. Uh,
Yeah,
whereas
Tony and
they're
Buemo.
they're a bit of a yeah, and Buemo's out for them as well. They're just in a bit of a weak moment.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's going to come
so
down to I think their wide backs and their midfield. If they can build up good passing sequences together to the point where they can get their wide fullbacks in behind our wide tens, I think then we might see them cause us a few issues. But if not, and we're able to effectively cut that out and stay tight and control the game, not necessarily from having the ball all the time, I think we'll probably be dominant on possession.
Yeah, I think we
Um,
probably will.
just because, even though Brentford are a counter-attacking side, a more defensive side generally, um, they in the times where they do tend to dominate the ball a bit more, they have lost, like they've shown recently. And because they don't have the quality of player on the pitch, I think we'll be happy to control the ball, not too concerned with what they can do on the counter, especially after what we did, to City. So
Yeah,
I think we can definitely come away with a win. There's a possibility of a draw, but I think you're right in just the fact that they're not in great form. They haven't got their best players on the pitch. It's an opportunity and an ideal time for us to go and win.
yeah. I think to be fair, we will. The one thing that Brentford will probably do quite well is they'll set up solidly, and I think they'll defend reasonably well. And I think we will struggle. We won't like walk all over them, and we won't. I think we'll struggle to create clear chances. So I think it will still be tight. I think in terms of scoreline, I'd go 1-0. I think maybe
Could
two.
be. I'm going to
Um,
go 2-1. I think I can see us scoring a couple.
yeah, yeah, I can see that as well.
Like,
Yeah,
isn't in terms of games where we've won, I think City and Arsenal were the only games where we've only scored one goal, right?
yeah, and like before those games as well, the clean sheets were very rare.
Yeah.
I'm
So
just looking at Brentford's home fixtures. They've played against Luton. They scored 3 goals, but they lost 1-0 to Arsenal, and I could potentially see it being quite similar to the Arsenal game
yeah,
because I think we'll
could definitely
dominate
be.
possession. Um, but I think they do tend to just defend well. But I think I'd probably be more inclined to go for the 2-1 if Mbuemo is in. But I reckon we can keep a clean sheet without Mbuemo. To be
Yeah.
fair.
I mean, I think you're right in the sense for keeping possession. I think that it's definitely something we can definitely look there to go and do, and I do think we will most likely do it. But there is that part of me that also looks at it like Emery sometimes just does things you don't expect for
Yeah,
reasons you don't understand, and it comes off. And he may
true. Yeah,
well go here and think, well, looking at their previous games, let's give Brentford the ball because they look vulnerable when they constantly have the ball. Um, they're not built for it. They don't have the players that they normally do on the pitch to take advantage of the counter attacks that they would have if we were possessing the ball. So, what are they? How are they going to score goals if they're trying to break us down from build-up play?
yeah,
If they
true.
probably wouldn't
Yeah,
even be able to do it breaking us down from a counter attack. So let's give them the ball. Let's let them try and play, and we'll pick off the pieces. That could be something he tries to do. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, it could play out a number of ways, but I'm going to say 2-1.
Okay, right. Yeah, I'll go 1-0. You're going 2-1. So 2 more games. We've got West Ham, Wolves.
Oh, not another one of these. This is
Yeah,
another one
that's
where I
just
could
a
say 3-2.
bit of a stinker, isn't it? That could have a 3-2 written all over it.
It really could. It's just Wolves scoring those goals.
Huang's in good form. They
Yeah,
don't tend to score loads, but I think they're capable of scoring 2 goals. And we spoke about West Ham being a
they're at
not a
home, are they,
particularly
West
strong
Ham?
defensive side. Yeah.
Do you know what, I'm going to have a quick look. How many of West Ham's home games recently have been 3-2s?
It's
um,
a really hard one to call, to be fair.
let's have a look. So
Wolves
1-1
Wolves
against
lost against Fulham
Palace,
3-2 away.
3-2, 3-2, 3-1. No, it won't be a 3-2. I think it's still bullshit. Um,
I'm going to go 3-2 just to piss you off.
oh God, if
When it
they
is 3-2, you're going to
no
cry.
no 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 no, it can't be 3-2 now. Shit. I might do something spicy here. 2-1 Wolves.
2 on Wolves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad shout. Yeah, it is a very unpredictable game. It really could go either way. I think.
Yeah, just
Wouldn't be
West
surprised.
Ham have been all over the place at home.
Yeah. Okay,
So
2 on
Wolves
Wolves.
could do it.
Yeah. What? How upset are you going to be when it ends up 3-2 and I get the point for
Well, I'm already going to be upset about the Forest game if that
it?
if that goes
You
your
could end
way.
up having a devastating weekend. Man.
Yeah, gonna cry.
Uh,
Is that all the games?
and
Have we got one more?
last game is Liverpool United at
Oh,
Anfield.
oh, this is the one where they need to win 7-0. That they need to do it again. They need to prove that United are shit. I think it doesn't need proving, but
Could that be the end of Ten Hag? It's kind of weird because we don't hear about Ten Hag, and his job seems to be still backed, partly because of their owner situation, I think. But with the form they're in and the kind of flip flopping of their results, if they lose 7-0 to Liverpool, that could just be a end of the road kind of situation, could it?
yeah, I mean it really could be 3-0 at home to Bournemouth, and then what,
Yeah,
4, 5, 6, 7
yeah.
away at Liverpool.
It's not like he's not been backed in the transfer windows and things like that.
I'm
So
just trying to think who are the other transitional teams in this league, and what kind of results have they been getting away at Liverpool? We, at least at the start of the season, were more transitional than we are now. At least we lost 3-0. Who else has been there? Fulham.
so I
Fulham are
think
fairly transitional. What was that?
Everton
Four
lost
three.
2-0. Brentford lost 3-0.
Mm.
Um,
And then you've
West
got
Ham lost
United.
3-1.
I can see a 3 or 4 at least for Liverpool. I believe, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I
Um,
mean, it also like United, they're scraping results because they're scoring a couple goals, and you look at the players, and Bruno Fernandes is one of them where he always turns up. He's got that mentality about him. McTominay's been in good form. Like Garnacho's been scoring mad goals. They've got quality up there, but you look at their defense, and when they're coming up against a really really strong attacking team away from home, like I've got no faith in that defense to hold up. To be honest.
well, I think they may have a change of tack because I think they understand that they are not good. Basically, I think they understand that, right? So they're going to
Yeah.
go to Liverpool, and I don't think they're going to go there and think, let's play a high
Oh
line and go
fuck!
toe to
Bruno
toe with
Fernandes is
Liverpool.
out as well.
Oh, is he? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to go to Liverpool and think, let's play a high line and go toe to toe
No,
with
no,
Liverpool.
no.
Whereas perhaps previously they might have, especially last year where Liverpool had dropped off, and then all of a sudden they got dominated. So I think they may come into this one a little bit more conservatively than perhaps
Yeah,
we
yeah, I can see
expect
that.
they previously would have.
I mean, they've been playing
Um,
fairly anyway. Like they've been just grinding them out, acknowledging that they're not, um, they're not a great team, and they've just been grinding them out. But
yeah, and
so yeah,
Maguire
yeah,
much prefers to play in a conservative side where they have a low
yeah,
block.
true.
That's where he
Yeah,
shines, and that's why he looks like he's all of a sudden one of the best defenders in the league. Um, despite the fact they keep losing. And in fact, actually, after that Bournemouth result, I don't think you can say that anymore. Like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like this is all kind of undercut by the fact they just lost 3-0 to Bournemouth. Like they were kind
yeah,
of grinding out results, but they're kind of not anymore.
well, yeah, you've got that one. I don't know if it counts for everything, but yeah, if
Yeah, I mean
Bruno's
they lost
out,
to Newcastle, but everyone loses
yeah,
at Newcastle away. So
I think yeah, we need to go for something. I don't know if I want to back a full five. Like, I guess you probably should just for the bonus point, but
I think I am. I think I might go for a 4-2
I was thinking
because I
four
don't. I'm
nil.
not convinced by Liverpool defensively. They conceded 3 against Fulham at home in that
Yeah,
4-3, and I think could see something fairly similar. Like one team clearly better, but they can be exposed defensively. I can see United scoring. So yeah, maybe 4-1, 4-2. I'm gonna go 4-2. I think
I'm gonna go 5-1 then.
5-1.
5-1.
That's a good shout as well.
5-0 or 5-1. I'll give them a one. I'll give them one.
Okay, taking the
5-1.
one. Okay. Right. Well,
That's it.
that's the week's fixtures.
It is.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think about fantasy?
Fantasy is very interesting because Haaland. What are we doing about this Haaland injury?
I don't know. I think I'm gonna leave him on the bench.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take him out.
I'm
because he's got a
more.
blank. He's got a blank game week where they go for
Oh
the
yeah,
Club World Cup or something. So he would if he could play against. They've got Palace this week. So
Trips is out.
if it's minor, he could play against Palace.
Yeah,
But then the next week he's not playing anyway. So I think I'm just going to risk him missing the Palace. Like even if he is in the Palace game, I'm just going to have to risk not having him for that game.
that's fair enough.
Um,
I'm in a bit more of a tricky situation for me because I've got Areola and Johnston, and
and they're
they,
both potentially injured.
yeah, they're both potentially injured.
Yeah, so I don't really have an injury situation.
And then
So
I've got Trips and Branthwaite both suspended. So I'm left with Lascelles, Gabriel, and Anderson,
mm,
um, which overall it doesn't look great for a clean sheet this weekend.
it's not great, but like they will all play. Like I think
Yeah,
when you have injury problems like that, like the baseline is like I always, especially with defenders, because you're not expecting attacking returns. I always kind of think if they get 90 minutes, I'm happy. Like you know, you
yeah,
don't you're not always in this kind of injury situation, and then with defenders, I'm kind of like, well, if they're playing,
yeah. Midfield, I've got a really interesting situation because like I wanted to bring in like a Saka or something, but the money just wasn't quite lined up. So at the moment, I've got Salah, as you would. I've got a Dingra who's in good form, so I'm like, don't want to move
yeah,
him at the
yeah,
moment. Bowen, who's usually in good form, but is occasionally just a bit absent. Hwang Hee-chan, who's been in good form. And then Diaby. So Diaby's obviously the guy that's probably going to come out. But if I swap him out, for example, for a Bailey, um, he's only 5.5. So if I swapped him out for a Bailey, then maybe I could bring in a Saka for a Bowen, for example. Or bring in a
that would be a
Trent for a Trippier.
strong move, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I'm gonna. I think I'll consider Trent because I think what I'm gonna do is get Haaland out for like 2 weeks and put Alexander Arnold in my back line because like I don't really know what else to do with the money. It's so expensive. It's like gives you this insane amount of money. You can't replace him with a striker that gets anywhere near his price. So you've got loads of extra money.
yeah,
So I think I'll get just a kind of temporary other expensive player like maybe Trent, and then kind of basically probably just do a straight swap for the two of them again in a few weeks' time. But yeah, I think Bailey is a good shout. Like if you can do Diaby to Bailey, Bailey's playing more than Diaby at the moment. He's on better form than Diaby at the moment, and he's underpriced. Like he gives you the funds to do to get a kind of more premium Saka or like a Son or something
yeah.
like that kind of player. And um,
Oh yeah, I
yeah,
didn't
so
think
it's an
about Son.
interesting week.
Oh, Saka or Son.
On yeah, well I've got them both.
Yeah. Have you got Saka, Son, Salah, and Haaland?
Yeah, so obviously I think I'll get Haaland out, but like my actual long term team would be Saka, Son, Salah, Haaland, and then currently I've got
Fuck.
He-Chan and Palmer. So they're the kind of
Saka,
two.
Son, and Salah. You
Yeah, I
really
think
went for the expensive players.
yeah, well it was my wild card. I thought like I was like, where do I prioritize the money? And I think when there's players like Palmer and Diaby, He-Chan, Bailey, when there are these players who are like actually fairly consistent and they're around the 5-6 mark, having like a couple of them is enough is a good compromise for having
Yeah,
Saka, Sanson. Because while like Palmer and Bailey, they're a bit cheaper because they're less consistent and stuff. Um, the consistency of Saka, Son, Salah, like easily makes up for it. Like you
yeah,
can pretty much expect something from those players every week. So even if Bailey has a dud week, you're kind of covered.
yeah.
Um,
I think some years as well we come into it and some of the expensive players aren't consistent, and
yeah,
some people keep faith with them, and that can cause a few issues in people's squads. But when all of the most expensive players are all performing consistently, like it's
yeah, you
almost a
can't say
no-brainer
no,
at
man.
times to just put them all
Yeah,
in and just take all
yeah,
those points. But
yeah,
yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
should we cut it off there because that's 2 hours now? Bit of a long episode again. Um,
Monster episode.
yeah. But there we go. That is the episode for the week. And if you enjoyed, or you like Matt's hat, or you like my hat, leave a like, comment who's got your favourite hat, and
Obviously me. Let's be real.
subscribe because we bring these out every week.
because
So
we're so entertaining.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. Bye bye.